All right,
Okay, so Keith, this morning
Ben.
we are at the Austin Film Society Red Building,
The red building is behind us,
right behind both of us.
and
What are
that's
we
right.
doing? What are we
Well,
doing here?
It's a bright and sunny October morning here in Austin, Texas, and we're right here in the epicenter of the film community at Austin Studios.
That's right, the old Austin Airport. This used to be a pilot's lounge right here.
That's right. And now it's a place where people meet. It's a place where I've been here many times for casting with Vicky Boone.
We officed out of here, the Bear did, for many, many years before we moved to our new office. So,
So it's a real epicenter of creativity, but it's also the entry point into the mystical world of Austin Studios.
Ooh.
Uh,
And specifically Detour Films and the man we are going to talk to today, who is Mike Blizzard.
That's what we're here to do. We're here to go for a walk with Austin super producer Mike Blizzard. He is a narrative producer with Richard Linklater.
Yep, he's done his
Many
last
Times
5
Over.
films.
Yeah.
Yep.
But he's also a documentary producer and a doc director.
And I'm really excited to talk to him because his documentaries are largely about baseball. And we're talking in October. It's during the Yoffs, which, for those of you who don't know, are the playoffs. So I'm very excited.
Everything's got to have a catchy little. He's in advertising, folks, and he's available. So, anyway,
Open to work, right
I'm
here.
Keith. That's Ben. Mike Blizzard is standing right over there, so we're gonna go track him down. This used to be an airport, and it's still pretty close to the airport.
There's planes flying overhead.
See planes.
Here-
Somewhere up there.
All right, and this is Dock Walks. Here we go.
On your left.
You're listening to Dock Walks with Ben and Keith. All right, ladies and gentlemen, meet Mike Blizzard.
Good morning. How's everyone today?
I have to point out, this is amazing what we're walking by here. So will you just narrate for us here where we are and what we're looking at?
We're at Austin Studios right now, which is run by the Austin Film Society, and this is one of their stages here. The trailer's over here, including Richard Linklater's trailer, where he offices. And a lot of films have been shot here over the years. Most famously, I guess, because it was the first one, MISS CONGENIALity was shot here.
Yeah, the
When
poster
the
we just
big-
walked by and
Yeah, the big scene where she walks out now all dressed up and everything and then falls flat on her face was shot right out here.
most recently I saw this hangar in Tom Segura's Netflix series, Bad Thoughts.
Yeah, I think it was shot here and over at Troublemaker, which is Robert Rodriguez's studio, which is just right across the way.
Yeah.
And he has also used this facility and space for a lot of spillover work for his movies, Machete and the Grindhouse movies.
Right.
And that was a real busy time for Austin in the 2000s. You know, Idiocracy shot here,
Office Space.
the Secondhand Lions,
Yeah.
you know, a whole bunch of different movies use this facility. And also just like Parkland was another one. That over there, which is now part of Austin Studios, was used as the Parkland Hospital,
Okay.
where they took JFK to when he was assassinated.
I want to point out that, like, where Mike is giving this history lesson of Austin Studios and all the movies that have shot here in town, we're talking to Mike primarily as a producer, but he is also a director, and he was the director of Also Starring Austin,
Yes.
the documentary that explores the history of film here in our sleepy little college town.
That's right.
Or at least that's where it started, way back when Eagle Pennell was doing his work.
Yeah. Toby Hooper.
Toby Hooper, and from those guys through Linklater and Rodriguez, and now this tremendous facility, Mike is kind of the keeper of the timeline. Yeah.
history.
Yes.
That's right.
I've watched nearly every movie that's ever been filmed in Austin, for sure. We thought maybe there was 50 movies at first, you know,
Yeah.
and there turned out to be, you know, 250 or something. So I think
Holy
that
Amazing.
we got like 120, like clips from 120 different movies and television shows that were shot in Austin in that movie, which doesn't really make sense. It's only 90 some minutes long,
Right.
but it moves in a fast clip.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's fair to say that it basically, in terms of production volume city-wise, that it goes LA, New York, Austin? Or is it like Atlanta, Austin?
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
Austin more like 4th or 5th?
Vancouver, or are you just talking domestic?
I'm talking about U.S. Yeah.
I mean, I think the difference is that a lot of those places kind of come and go.
Yeah.
Well, Austin has been pretty steady. Obviously, there's times when it's slower or faster, whatever, for more than 50 years. But Austin's definitely up there in one of the top 5, places, especially with like homegrown films. Filmmakers, like we're right here on the other side of this building is Richard Linklater's office. Like a short walk, it was Robert Rodriguez's facility. When those two guys decided to be successful, but then put their roots down and stay here, that made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Tobe Hooper, he went to Hollywood. That was what you did back then.
Tobe Hooper is, of
Chainsaw
course,
Massacre.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Helmer.
Yeah, and he made what I consider the first feature film of the modern era of Austin, because there was a silent film era, by the way. But his movie Eggshells, which was just this hangout, hippy-dippy, I forget what they call it, a freak illumination.
Oh, I gotta see this. I've never seen this.
Oh, yeah.
I have. We use a short excerpt of it in Dear Mr. Brody.
Right.
They drive in a taxi up to the to the Texas State Capitol with this trippy kind of psychedelic effects, like washing over the 16mm screen. We stole that.
They created a vehicle where they had like a little bubble on top, and they would just adjust the speed of the camera as they were cruising through town, and it creates all these really cool effects. It wasn't something they did in post. It was like in camera. If you're watching it at home, it's a little hard, but you got to see it on a big screen.
Right.
And we need to bring it back. We brought Tobe Hooper to town as part of making the movie to interview him, and we showed Eggshells as part of his visit.
Cool.
It was a total trip.
Does it hold up? Did you like it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was fun for him to talk about it. It's like this thing. I mean, Lewis Black really deserves a lot of credit for he paid to have that film remastered.
Oh, wow.
And before that,
Lewis Black, who started the Chronicle and South
by West,
and has been a patron of film art here in Austin for many
years.
Yeah.
So he remastered Tobe Hooper's early films and Eagle Pennell. So Eagle Pennell came drawn in part by the Chainsaw phenomenon. He started making movies here too. That's how Sonny Carl Davis got his start.
Right.
And a lot of these things still have a through line. I mean, when we do sound on Rick Linklater's movies, we go over to Soundcrafter where Wayne Bell is working, doing dialogue editing, and he worked on Chainsaw. He worked on Eagle Pennell's movies. He started like when he was 19 years old. So a lot of that infrastructure that started then still exists.
Right. The fact that Rick stayed here and built the Austin Film Society and still works with his friends, longtime collaborators, I think that's just as cool as it gets.
Yeah.
Build up the thing in your hometown rather than move away and try to do a new thing with new people. Let's stay here and develop the thing that you've done successfully already with the same people.
Let's take a step back to get right back to Rick working with his friends and you being one of his friends. Let's walk.
Yeah.
Mike, for fans of baseball, they know you from 2 significant baseball documentaries. No, the documentary about the acid-fueled no-hitter, created one wild 1970s night by Doc Ellis. And we want to get a little in depth on that, but I'm also going to jump to your current film, which is Clemente.
And the reason you're wearing your Pittsburgh Pirates t-shirt.
Yes.
And so we know
An advertising opportunity.
like I said in our intro, we know Mike as a fiction producer, sometimes based on a true story, but not always, and working primarily with Richard Linklater over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
But this is documentary focused podcast, so let's start by talking docs. And there are 3 docs that I know of that have your major stamp on them. We just talked about Also Starring Austin, which is kind of not exactly an essay film, but it's a kind of a film that looks at the history of film here in Austin with a ton of clips and examples, and then talking to the filmmakers behind the stories. And then these 2 baseball docs. Let's start with Clemente, because that's the film that's in theaters now, and that's the film that Ben and I just saw on Sunday. Tell us about Clemente.
Yeah, so Roberto Clemente, there had been a PBS documentary, about an hour-long PBS documentary about him, and that's all that was out there. And during the making of No, Clemente plays a big role in that because Doc Ellis very much looked up to him, and there's some indication that his drug use after Clemente died spiraled out of control. Many of the teammates so much looked up to him. He was like an uncle figure, a big brother figure, almost a father figure to so many of the other players.
What time period is Clemente's role in the Pittsburgh Pirates?
He sort of started to hit his peak in like 1960 when they won the World Series against the New York Yankees. And then his career really skyrocketed. But he was a black Puerto Rican. You know, he doesn't fit in with the black community because he's Puerto Rican.
Right.
There's not a big Puerto Rican community there, and almost the entire team at that time was white. And there was very few Latinos in major leagues. Now it's what, 30%, 35% of the league?
Yeah. Right. You movie. I only know that from your film. It says that at the end. Like when he started, it was 5%, I think.
Yeah.
And now they're 35 or something.
Yeah, and he was the first Latino superstar. But because of that, he really felt like he needed to set an example. He needed to live an exemplary life.
Right.
He felt, you know, privileged to have success that he did, and he wanted to give back. And so he very much was a proud Puerto Rican and would go back to Puerto Rico and work with kids, you know, teaching them baseball, but also how to live their lives.
Right.
And as the movie shows too, he also had a huge impact on Pittsburgh, and especially the youth of Pittsburgh.
That is one of my favorite parts, by the way, is that story where you find the longtime Pittsburgh fan, and he tells the story about living next to the ballpark and Clemente stopping.
Playing catch with him.
Well, on his drive home, plays catch with him, and then his parents invite him in for Sunday dinner, and he sits and he has Sunday dinner with the family, and then they keep in touch.
Well,
That's
and
so amazing.
And then you think that story can't be beat, and then you meet the young girl who randomly meets him to get his autograph. Or not randomly, she meets him to get his autograph, but discovers that he's missed his ride to the airport, and she twists her dad's arm to give him a ride to the airport, and they become lifelong friends.
Lifelong friends,
Totally.
like 40 years.
Multi-generational family friends.
Incredible.
Yeah, did a premiere there, the Pittsburgh premiere there, and then the next night we showed it at the ballpark.
Oh, cool.
You know, on the Jumbotron.
That's special.
It was a great experience, and Pittsburgh especially. It's on the river. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
The
3
Roberto
rivers,
Clemente Bridge is right there. You know, oh my God.
So wait a minute. So you make 2 baseball documentaries. You work with Richard Linklater, who is famously a rabid baseball fan.
Yep.
He was a baseball player himself. Are you a huge baseball fan? You must be.
Here's the funny thing is, I am more of a basketball guy. I played basketball.
You're
growing
tall.
up,
I can see that.
and to this day, I'm more of a basketball fan than I am a baseball fan. I love the San Antonio Spurs. I also like the Houston Rockets.
Interesting. You just got pulled into these baseball
I fell
projects.
into this, and sort of one thing leads to another. So No definitely led to my involvement in Clemente, because a woman I met in Pittsburgh, Laura Heberton, she is a Brooklyn-based producer, but from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
She was at the sneak peek we did of No right before the film was released. So she called me. She said, got these guys? Yeah, we call them young guys. They're 40 probably, but for Dallas, they're young. Says, and they're making this Roberto Clemente documentary. And I think you could be really helpful to them if you'd be willing to talk to them. And so I did. And it was only later that they told me that that was sort of a key time for them. They were sort of stuck. They didn't tell me this at the time.
Yeah, we all know that feeling.
And they felt like they weren't making any progress, and was this going to work out? And so I helped them get with the team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, because I already had those relationships.
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard Linklater's office right here, by the way.
Oh, here, the slipper.
So fancy. Very fancy.
This one right here.
Yeah.
Tell us about the director, David
Altrogi.
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy. And Michael Hartnett, who's the DP and producer. Just the nicest guys you could ever imagine. In fact, maybe even too nice at times. I think I helped them through the process too, navigating the festival path and distribution path and all that kind of stuff with them. And so as time went on and I started spending more time, they said, well, we'd really like you to be a producer on the film. So that happened, and I told Richard Linklater about it, and I told them his childhood Roberto story.
Right, which
And
is
they were
suiting
like,
the film. Yeah.
They're like, we have to interview him. And so I called him to tell him, hey, they want to interview you. He was a little shy about it. You know, it's like, why would I be in a Roberto Clemente movie? And I said, well, you know, they've got this thing that they're doing about his impact on kids, and there's these Pittsburgh kids, and they thought it was interesting. Here's this kid growing up in Houston and how he was affected by
Yeah.
Clemente.
And so the story, for those listening who haven't seen the movie, is that Linklater, growing up, wanted to be a professional baseball player. He writes letters to his baseball heroes, and basically nobody responds really except for Clemente. Clemente, he sends a picture that he cuts out of the newspaper to him in the mail and asks for his autograph, and Clemente sends it back autographed with a little note that says, "You're on the right track, keep going," something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Rick still has it.
Oh yeah, he calls it his most prized possession.
Wow.
So I could tell he was a little on the fence about it. So I told David, I said, do what he does. Write him a letter. Write him a persuasive letter. Send it to me. I'll forward it to him.
This is good producing.
About why he should be in the movie and how his story fits and why you want to do an interview. And he did that. And then next thing I know, it's already set up. Like I didn't have to do another thing.
That's the best kind of producing right there.
Exactly.
Talk to us about that, your role as a producer, and kind of what you love about it, what you bring to it, and kind of how it changes project to project.
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah, it's like 3 questions.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
It really does depend on the project, what your role is. Like, a No, I was there at every interview, helping set those up and schedule them and all that kind of stuff, very much on the ground. For Clemente, I wasn't at any interview. That was all done by them.
Yeah.
It helped once Rick and I sort of came on board to get certain people they believe, like that Michael Keaton did it, that Rita Moreno did it. It gave them like some sort of legitimacy that this was going to happen, that it was a big deal or whatever. But I was a political consultant before I was a film producer, and the two things actually are kind of similar.
Ooh, this is juicy because I wanted to ask you about that. So tell us how.
Well,
possibly alike.
It's kind of like strategic thinking, I guess, and persuasion. You have to get people to do things. You're in a documentary, you're not paying those people to participate. You have to convince them that this is something they should be participating in and want to participate in. And so there's a lot of similar things, just like when you're building a campaign. And the other thing is, like, typically, though documentaries can take a very long time sometimes, you also have to sort of start up from nothing to something over some period of time, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is.
And I assume it's similar in that people really believe in the cause.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and if they don't, you have to convince them how it affects them and why it matters.
Yeah. When I started wanting to transition to being more involved in film, I thought I wanted to be a screenwriter. And I feel like that my brain got rewired from so many years of juggling a lot of different things and stuff, that I became a more effective multitasker than someone who's singularly focused.
Right.
You have to be to write,
Yeah,
And
that's a good way to say it. And multitasking is a great skill to have as a producer.
Yeah, and so I'm usually working on more than one thing at a time, both within a project and multiple projects.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this, can we see Troublemaker from right here, or is that on the other side?
It's on the other side.
I see.
Can we take a look over here? Is this one of Linklater's famous muscle cars behind
I
it?
don't know. I've never seen this car back here before. Robert definitely has a bunch of his old cars still sitting over there on the Troublemaker lot.
Oh, yeah?
But I don't know where this car came from.
So you come from political consulting, and it's interesting for frequent listeners. You might remember back in episode 19 when we interviewed Dr. Paul Steckler, who also has a background in politics. What do you think are the overlaps between politics and film?
That's an interesting question. I do, at times, especially as the world has gotten crazier and crazier over the last however many years it's been, the last 10 years in particular, maybe.
Right.
I do sometimes feel like, what am I doing? Like, why am I making entertainment? I should go back into the trenches and be involved in some way.
Yeah.
But that's not, but it's like, that's not my path now.
Yeah.
It's really for someone 20 years younger than me.
Right.
Really.
Well, you could make an argument that like entertainment could be more persuasive. Than
right.
politics.
It can.
Do you make
too.
that argument?
I do think that there are certain documentaries, certainly, that have in other films, if you look at The Thin Blue Line, got a man off of death row.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, what was the documentary about the whales?
Oh, Blackfish?
Yes.
Yeah.
That completely changed that industry.
Totally. The Cove, do you remember that
Oh,
one? They
yes.
came out and won like every award.
Oh, yeah.
That came out the year Winnebago Man did, and they just, every festival, it was like the Cove's going to win whatever award there is to win. And it was because it was about people eating dolphin.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, so
that came out and everybody was like, we're not going to eat dolphin.
Well, Ben, of course, famously made Winnebago Man, which was about people eating Winnebagos. And it's far less appetizing than dolphins, which are delicious.
But I'll just say too, Winnebago Man, I mean, it's one of the funniest documentaries ever made. I mean, I was actually I felt like I was going to fall out of my seat at the Paramount Theater into the aisle, just rolling on the floor laughing.
Oh, thank you.
It was so funny. And that's a benefit to society, you know?
Hugely, yeah.
And so, and then, you know, a movie like Clemente, it's like, that has an impact on people. When we showed it at South by Southwest last year, the first question, it wasn't even a question, a guy stands up and he says, I don't have a question. I just want to say that after watching this movie, I'm going to be a better father. I'm going to be a better husband. I'm going to be a better person. And that's what he said. He couldn't have set it up better.
Oh my gosh.
And we're going to check in with that guy and find out if it bore fruit.
Wow, that like almost tears me up. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Like,
Yeah.
you can't ask for a better reception
than that.
to your work. Yeah.
And I think that it makes us all feel that way.
Right.
Like, I've watched it however many times now.
Sure.
And I feel that way same time. And I cry every time I watch it.
Yeah.
No makes me cry. Sam Douglas, who edited
Yeah.
that movie, he talked about sitting there at the editing, you know, just blubbering every time through certain sections. And so, you know, if you can move people, that's what matters.
Right.
You know, if you can make them laugh, if you can make them cry,
Yeah.
or whatever, then you're touching them personally in some way, and you don't really know what the impact of that is.
Absolutely. It feels like our industry is so in flux. You know, people going to a theater, sitting in a dark room together, watching a 90-minute story that makes them emote. Feels like that's on the chopping block and getting, you know, less and less relevant by the day. So as a producer, somebody who's going out and like putting it all on the line to make films, like how are you thinking about the landscape? And, you know, is it changing for you? Is the goalpost moving?
Totally. I mean, the 10 years difference between No and Clemente, the market for sports documentaries with some sort of social edge or whatever you want to call it, has dried up tremendously.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, nothing against the History Channel, but we're on the History Channel.
Yeah.
We're not on Netflix.
Right.
We're not on Showtime.
Right.
You know, we're not on Apple TV.
Showtime doesn't even exist hardly anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's where we put No first, and then it went over to Netflix after that. And so we thought we had a shot with Apple TV.
Yeah.
You know, and they just decided it's too historic is what it was. And it's like, to me, that means it has a decent amount of black and white footage. Because if you make a movie about Michael Jordan, that's historic, but it's all in color.
Right.
You know, I really think people think about it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because
Like it needs to have a present day element.
yes, it needs to feel very present. And we you know, got current players because of that. We
Right.
talked to people on the street during Clemente Day and stuff to give it, like, what does he mean today? What is his legacy? Like, and you know, like we talked about before, like the amount of Latino players
Right.
today.
Shout out to Yadier Molina, my Cardinals superstar.
Yeah.
Oh wait, do we want to look at this car? We came over here to look at this amazing.
I know. It's
Nova.
a Chevy Nova.
The Chevy Nova. You know, my favorite thing about the Nova
It doesn't.
is that they did not sell well in Mexico or Latin America because of the name.
Really?
Well, maybe neither of you are Spanish speakers. What does Nova mean in Spanish?
Don't have?
Don't go.
Don't go.
Don't go. This car don't go.
Oh no. Wait a minute. We got closer to the Chevy Nova and it just really smells like weed all of a sudden. Is it the car?
I think, Mike, what do you got in your pocket? Yeah. So Clemente is in theaters right now here in Austin. Ben and I just saw it last Sunday. Just briefly, what was the festival rollout and kind of what's the distribution plan? How can people out there see this film?
Yeah, Clemente premiered at South by Southwest in 2024, won the Audience Award in the Doc category,
Nice.
and went on to the New York Latino Festival, which was one of the greatest screenings I've ever been at, as far as like audience participation and yelling out at the screen and cheering and things. It was an incredible experience, played several other festivals, but it's a hard time for docs right now. LeBron James's company, Uninterrupted, had done something with the History Channel. So they recommended, hey, the History Channel's looking for cooler content, new things or whatever, and we think this might be a good spot for it. And ended up going there. So it had a theatrical release that started September 12th, mostly on the East Coast, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Florida.
Did they time it specifically with the end of baseball season going into the playoffs?
Yeah, and also it released on September 12th, and September 15th is MLB's Roberto Clemente Day. So we were able to get a lot of coverage because they need to talk about him.
Yeah.
And on that day in every city. Yeah. And so we tried to get the documentary in front of as many of those people as possible so that they would mention it.
Smart.
Got mentioned on The View on Clemente Day and a whole bunch of,
That's right, and everybody wears his number on Clemente
They do.
Day, right? And
like
then, every team gives a Roberto Clemente award to the player that does the most charitable work for the community, right?
Every team nominates one of their players for the Clemente Award.
Right.
And then that person is then chosen. And there's an award winner.
Who's doing those like strategic partnership with MLB and that like promo push tied to that date? Is that you as a producer? Is that the distributor? Is that
was really LeBron James's company, Uninterrupted.
Great.
And because they have all those media and sports relationships.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they're sort of like at the nexus of sports, entertainment, media, and so they brought in a company, I think it's 42 West publicity company.
Sure. Yeah.
And they were great. And so that's how we were able to line up, the screening at the stadium and a lot of the media around it. It was in 70 theaters, but most of them, that's already, kind of happened. AFS did it a little later. Mm-hmm. It's sort of, once you get that initial jump, then other people start picking it up.
Right. Yeah.
And then, honestly, got off to a little bit of a slow start, ticket sales wise in Austin. But now it's been extended for another week because we're starting to get out there. And
I
so
love
we're
hearing
just
that.
keeping
So
going.
many guests that we've had on this podcast tell us that AFS is one of their biggest grossing theaters. That people in Austin still go to the movie theater and support independent films, and that always makes me really proud of living here.
And you see just guys like you went, on Sunday. And so you go there and there's a whole bunch of other filmmakers.
Right.
The conversations in the lobby are always amazing.
Yeah.
When people move to Austin, they ask me, well, how can I get involved in the film scene? I'm like, start going to AFS Cinema.
That's what I tell them too.
Go there,
to people.
Sunday afternoon.
Go there,
Sunday afternoon at the cinema is absolutely my favorite place to be on a Sunday afternoon in this town.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not like Austin is a good example, right? I think one of the reasons AFS does so well is that there's really only one art house cinema left in our town.
Totally.
Right. There was a time when there was the Regal Arbor was putting up art house. We used to have the Dobie, Violet Crown, which is gone very mainstream.
Also book a couple art house films.
That's right.
Regularly. Yeah.
And so on the one hand, it's like we've talked to lots of filmmakers who've said there's an art house revolution going on and that there's real support for art house. But I sadly think it's actually a winnowing down of opportunities, which is concentrated.
Yeah, that's
right. That's probably true.
But in that concentration comes community.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, ups and downs with all of it. You're on History Channel now.
Yes.
Great. And that'll live in their streaming portal for a while.
And it's also like if you have Roku, you can like rent it right off of Roku and or watch it right off of Roku, and then it's for rent on all the typical platforms.
Right.
There's a multitude of ways.
Available for
Multitude of ways to see it. Yeah.
Cool.
Before we move on from Clemente totally, what did you learn in the process as a producer and as somebody who kind of joined a moving train? Ben often likes to talk about nobody likes to start a project or be the person who pushes the train down the tracks, but people love to move on a moving train, and that's what you did here.
Yes, definitely. And I do think too, it's like you want to see that people are doing for themselves. And that, once you get legs in a project, that's when people will be drawn to it. If you're waiting to be anointed, like, hey, I've got this great idea.
Yeah.
I want you to be a producer. I want so-and-so to be an executive producer, whatever. That's a bigger sell. Go out there and start doing things, making stuff happen, doing your interviews, being able to put stuff together. And then you can see, okay, these people are serious. They want to do this. They want to do it for the right reasons or whatever. And then you're much more comfortable hopping onto that train.
Right.
And it builds from there. But you have to have that spark to get it going and to bring people onto the train.
And you've been on both sides of that, it sounds like. And Clemente was more like it was the train was moving.
Totally.
And on the film you made yourself and directed, and then on No No, those were more like projects you were with from the ground up.
Oh yeah, from idea to execution.
Yeah. But is there anything you took away from producing Clemente that's something you added to your producer's repertoire, something you learned?
You know, I think that every single one of these things is so unique that you just learn each time. You certainly, every time that a film's going out into the market, you learn new tricks and new opportunities. And I would have never thought of the History Channel. You know, it wasn't on my radar at all until someone brought it onto my radar.
Mine either. And now,
and now people are like, hey, maybe I should be talking to the History Channel.
Right.
So that's all kind of, you know, you have to cobble these things together, whether it's financing a film or distributing a film. I have not had one experience that's the same.
Isn't that the truth? We have a commercial production company too, as you know, and we always try to standardize the process. And you laugh because it's like there is no standard process. Like every job, even when it's basically the
same client, same
client, it's everyone is so radically different. You know, the needs are different. The audience is different. The way you go about it is totally different.
Yeah,
so,
it changes all the time. Look at these tiny little cameras you're using.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Barrett, my business partner, has this great phrase about it where he's like, they call it a production because it's always a production. It's never easy.
One thing I thought was really cool in Clemente that I will say that I learned was the animation. A lot of times in documentaries, animation can be a distraction if it's not mixed well with the style of the rest of the film. You know, so you're showing this archival stuff from the 60s and 70s, and suddenly you go to this very, very sparkling modern animation can be jarring. And so what they did with that was they did the animation and they printed it on 16 millimeter film to give it that grainy feel so that it's relatively seamless when you go from these old archival scenes to...
Sorry to interrupt us here, but I can't help but point out there is another amazing muscle car here at the AFS lot.
Something is going on.
Oh, a Scamp.
Yeah.
A Valiant.
Dude.
Look at
Car before.
You know, Mike, you'll know this better than me. Is it true they shoot like Walker, Texas Ranger here?
They did, but it recently got canceled, unfortunately, even though it was one of the most successful shows on that network.
Wow.
And so right now, it's not busy here like it normally would be because both Rooster Teeth, who occupied probably half the space here, and the Walker show both shut down at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So it looks like maybe there's a commercial going on in here at this point with all these few trucks out here and stuff, but just been picking up various, you know, things until a new TV show or something comes in.
Man, and then and we're also talking at a time when the incentives have passed.
Yeah, I know.
You know, so like
You would
it's
think it
never
would be
been
more
more
active.
attractive to shoot in Austin right now.
Yeah, but the whole industry is kind of like TV shows and things. I think people are still, there's a lot of waiting and seeing. Right now.
Yeah, so going back to, I'm sorry, I just took us radically off topic from the animation.
I wanted to comment on the animation because, you know, right when we walked out of there, Ben said to me, he said, what do you think of the animation? And the very first thing I thought of was I really love the composite on that animation. There was something, you know, animation is created in layers, and foregrounds and background composite is something I'm particularly critical of oftentimes. And there was something special about the composite that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And hearing you say they printed on 16 millimeter, that's what it is.
Right.
The layers were baked together with the grain in an actual organic way and not digital grain applied to cover seams. And there's something that softened that entire look. And it's something that, I don't know, I was impressed, particularly with the composite. I know it's like a nerdy and very particular thing to pay attention to in animation. I think the much bigger and more important question is, does the animation serve the storytelling, right? And does it deserve to, like, does it win the audience over, and does it earn its runtime, and does it honestly earn its line item in the budget? Because we all know animation is expensive. And the short answer is yes to all those things, but you unlocked a question I wasn't going to ask because it was a little wonky and a little nerdy, but I'm glad to know, and I think I'm gonna steal one of those.
That's great coming from you, especially make one of the greatest animated documentaries ever made. One of my favorite documentaries of all time, Tower.
You're very
Where
kind.
that animation absolutely served a purpose. You know, it took you there. You were able to feel like you were there. You were able to relate to those people. When the kid is riding the bike and he gets shot, every time I've seen that movie, I've probably seen it 5 times, I feel it. Like, I feel like if someone was just relating that story to you, it would be a completely different experience.
Well, I have to tell you, like, I appreciate, it's great to hear you say that. Of course, it's great to hear you say that. Thank you, Mike. But speaking of taking you there, we were walking right through here when you were talking about all the movies that have been shot on this location, and Tower only shot 2 days at Austin Studios, but we shot right here, literally right there in this empty parking lot spot is the place where the red-headed student comes and runs out and lays down next to Claire, the pregnant woman. It became the poster image of the movie, and it was shot exactly right there. We needed a big enough parking lot for her to kind of emerge into the scene, and we shot a little bit inside of this building right here.
I had no idea.
Yeah, making anything, like our friend Barrett says, it's called a production because it's a production.
Right.
But that production, the 2 most like legitimate like production days happened here at Austin Studios. It's the only time I've ever worked in like a real, you know, Hollywood-esque, you know, production world. And so they really stand out in high relief.
Awesome. Should have been nominated for an Oscar. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely.
Well, so that's the, you know, we had a run. It's easy to look at things like that and think of all the things that didn't happen, but especially like you said, it's been 10 years since No, it's been 9 years since Tower, and what I'm left with is all the things that did happen. And what's amazing is like you build a career in steps, right? Like every project while you're making it feels like the most important thing and maybe the only thing you can focus on and the only thing that you might ever get a chance to do. But when a thing is done, you move on to the next one, and that one becomes your child, and that one becomes your focus, and that one, and you never know how the world is going to take any of them, right? So you have to appreciate the process as you go.
I want to get back to what you were talking about earlier, where you were a political consultant. You're thinking the world is crazy, especially the last 10 years or so. You're making the biggest films of your career, producing last 5 Linklater movies. You are, from where I think most people said, you're like an unbelievable success story in terms of being a filmmaker, producer, director, and yet you're still like, guys, this moving the needle. Like, what do you talk to me more about that? Like, what are you thinking? Maybe there's like a new way of making movies, or presenting them, or doing something else, or what? How are you thinking about the state of the industry right now?
I'm in a little bit of a bubble because I'm in the Richard Linklater bubble,
right?
And so when I'm trying to help younger filmmakers and whatever, we don't necessarily play by the same rules, because you've got a person that's got this body of work, who's got relationships with actors, got, best buddies with Ethan Hawke, right? Things like this, that you can put together a movie and get the financing for it. Not enough financing, by the way, ever, that you at least can make the movie.
Right.
But I think what people don't realize too is that we're always struggling to make the movie. We're always given far less money than is necessary to make the movie. Hitman was a huge struggle to make. I mean, it looks like a $25 million movie, but we made it for significantly less than that. Wow. Blue Moon, that's about to come out right now. We had to really work to make that work in the way that a Richard Linklater film should be.
Right. It's shocking probably for people to hear, because it's on Netflix. You see billboards for it. I mean, Hitman was huge.
Yeah.
And you would think like, oh, he's probably just getting a blank check.
Yeah, we got a set check that said, this is how much you get to make this movie. And we said, that is not enough to make the movie. And they said, well, then find a place that has incentives if you want to add to it, but this is what you get. And so that's a huge struggle to make, and we did it in New Orleans.
So I was going to say, set in Texas.
Set in Houston. Shot in New Orleans, and that was because at that time, the film incentive was completely zeroed out. Like, all the money had been spent.
Yeah.
If we had even gotten like $1 million from Texas, we would have made the movie in Texas.
But what a heartbreak that, like, Texas is sort of like, best known filmmaker has to go to Louisiana to make
When he first called me about Hitman, we had just done Apollo 10 and a half, and he was like, hey, here's the next Houston movie for us. You know, Glenn and
You're
I have
from
a
Houston.
script.
You grew up in
Yes,
Houston,
yeah.
right?
So that was part of the appeal.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, this is going to be great. And then, you know, we just were not able to make it happen.
Just for a shorthand here, could you just like bullet point the films that you've made with Linklater just so that we have that reference?
Yeah, so Apollo 10.5, Hitman, Blue Moon. We're shooting this thing, Merrily We Roll Along, over 20 years. It's 9 segments, and we've shot 3 of those segments.
Nice.
And then I'm much less involved in the French movie, Nouvelle Vague. I basically held down the fort in the United States, kept all the different balls rolling, which gave him the freedom to go make the movie.
Incredible.
So we were able to, so that year, because of the strike, everything got pushed into last year. And so during that calendar year, we shot 2 segments of Merrily Roll Along, Nouvelle Vague, and Blue Moon. I wouldn't recommend it to others.
And you've got Clemente. So you've got
and Clemente.
So you got 3 films in theaters this fall.
Right, yes.
And
That was
Merrily
never
We
intended.
Roll Along is gonna. We'll all see that in
2040.
Okay. We'll be here for that one. I can't wait to do that episode.
I think going back to what we were talking about before, we shot the 3rd segment of Merrily here, just right in one of these hangars over here.
Okay.
And so we're watching at the, you know, it's late, we're going overtime, we're all watching the screens and crying at this scene. And then we walk out and you're in this, you know, it's nighttime, you're in this empty lot, and you realize no one's going to see what we just worked on for 15 years. And actually, that's a great feeling because you feel like, wow, this is like art for art's sake. People are going to see it eventually,
Right.
but you can't guarantee that.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like a time capsule you guys are creating.
Yeah.
You know? Like
And so-
hopefully somebody will see this in
Yeah.
15 years. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You know, so you have to have that hope and you have to have like that belief in the art,
Right.
you know, and a patience. I mean, if Rick Linklater brings anything to this world, it's the biggest sense of patience.
It's amazing.
You know, when I first got involved with him, we were trying to make what became Apollo 10.5. It was called The Space Age. And it was this story where we were with a studio for a while and then we got dropped. And it was devastating to me. It's like the first narrative film. It's this great opportunity. And I was just really emotionally crushed, you know, just like, oh my God. He sent this email to like the 6 or 7 people who were, you know, trying to make it happen, where I was saying, this film is going to happen. You know, I've been through this before, you know, we know we're on the right track, blah, blah. And that was when he had the idea, why aren't we animating this movie? Wouldn't it work so much better if it was animated? Why didn't I think of this before? We're able to take that path, go to Netflix. They love the idea. They had this growing animation, you know, part of their platform at that time and made that happen. But it was because you had that patience and still put one foot in front of the other,
Right.
no
That
matter
belief
what.
that like this
Yeah.
is going to happen. Like we talk a lot about, you have to be a force of will to do this
Yes.
work. You literally have to create something out of nothing and be the one that believes in it, because nobody cares. At the end of the day, nobody's asking you to do it. So it's all like self-imposed, and you have to like really have the drive and the energy and the vision to do that.
People, and I will tell you that, you know, when you're making a documentary, especially, and you're talking about it and then it's not happening, it's not coming out, family members, friends, they all start to say, so is this happening?
Right.
Are you still working on that?
Well, the timelines that we work on and the timelines of like the public consciousness are 2 such different tracks.
Totally.
Yeah.
With Merrily We Go Along, or Boyhood, you know, which I think, you know, is of that same DNA. This is something that like you guys are breaking the mold, right? You're breaking the idea that a movie is a 3-year process, or when people say, oh, it took 10 years to get this movie made. Usually what they mean is they wrote a draft 10 years ago.
Right, yeah.
They had a meeting, you know, every 3 months for 2 years. They put it aside for 6 years. They did 2 other things. Then they dusted it off and picked it back up. But Merrily We Go Along, just to be clear on what this is, because you said you've shot it in, it's going to be shot in 9 segments over 20 years.
Yes.
Can you just give us a picture of what that means?
Yeah, so it goes in reverse from 1976 to 1957. So we've already shot the end of the film where they first meet, and they're all on the rooftop watching for Sputnik. And so that's how the group of 3 people come together. And so at the beginning of the movie, which we will be shooting many, many years from now, you see them as older and jaded. cynical, alcoholic, various things. And then the whole story is peeling back the onion of who they were and what drove them in the first place. And so on the stage, until very recently, it had never been a success. It was one of Sondheim's biggest flops. It was Stephen Sondheim musical. So it's a musical. People sing. We record them in the studio beforehand. So that's been a learning process for me. And then they have a little earwig in their ear where they can listen to themselves or the others sing along. But it's not like people start dancing. They're just singing a lot of what they're thinking and their dialogue with each other. And so it's a very grounded kind of musical. And I think it'll feel even more grounded because it's being filmed.
Yeah.
Rather than on the stage where you just have like sort of minimal props and stuff.
Right.
It started when Sondheim was still alive. I never got to meet him, unfortunately, but Rick did. And we feel a real responsibility to do it the right way, the way he would have supported. You know, it's a really cool, fun, crazy thing to be involved in.
That's awesome. Okay, Mike, so we're at the end of our walk here. One of the things that we're trying to get better at doing is doing like a lightning round with our guests at the end.
Okay.
So one of the first questions that we like to ask all of our guests is, what was the gateway drug film for you? What was the film that you saw where all of a sudden you were like, I could do that. I want to make movies. This is my new path.
That's a really good question. I am, Slacker is certainly one of them. The type of movie that you feel like you watch and you think, oh, that's doable.
Right.
I can see. So I also love.
And
like,
you were in Slacker, right? Is that how
No,
you-
No, I was
That's why
not.
that you
Tommy
were-
Pilato was in it, who's produced with me Politan and a Half.
This is
These-
right here is a hot take. AI told us that you were in Slacker, and that's
Oh my
how
gosh.
you met Linklater.
Ben's reliance on AI has bit us in the ass again.
Yep. You heard it here first. It's unreliable, folks.
But movies like Do the Right Thing, Hollywood Shuffle, these movies, a lot of times first-time filmmakers, scrappy, using their credit card or whatever, all that stuff was like what I really loved and thought, okay, that's doable.
Right.
Something like that.
Where were you in your life? And so Do the Right Thing's 86, Slacker's 91. Where were you professionally or personally when those movies came out?
I was in graduate school.
Yeah.
I think I was still in graduate school when Hollywood Shuffle came out. I was in grad school when Slacker came out. I remember going to see it at the theater. I remember going back with friends. I remember going to see Hands on a Hard Body was also a big phenomenon.
So many times.
Go back and back and
We're gonna get S.L. Bindler on the show.
Oh, awesome! Yeah. And I still think of those movies like Sean Baker. You watch a movie like Tangerine. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like those movies just make you excited about like, okay, that's a doable thing. I can see how people are like influenced by that. And to watch him like sort of build his career from that. Even though he's making bigger movies now, they still have that kind of edge.
Right.
Yeah.
A Red Rocket, for instance.
Right,
Right. The way he used like
Amora,
the Texas City, backdrop is almost a character. I love that kind of stuff.
And then how about your advice to a filmmaker just starting out now?
Got to get your friends together and you just got to start doing it. You have to show momentum. You don't wait around to be anointed. No one's going to anoint you.
Right.
They got their own things going on. And there's no magic bullet. People think, oh, well, you've been involved in all these films. You must know people with money that give money to films. I don't. It's a huge misconception.
I mean, that was going to be the next question in the lightning round is,
Cut. This interview's over.
what does that mean to you, just get going? I mean, in a documentary sense and in a scripted sense, what does just get going mean to you as a producer?
You want to do it right as you're getting going, right? You don't want to have to redo things. So you do have to know what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. But in a documentary, it really does mean start collecting all the archive. Start, interviewing maybe some key people so that you can put together a teaser to show people. I'm looking at one right now about a musician, and I'm thinking this could be great because they went out and they hung out with him. They filmed him. They filmed another prominent musician who he played on his album, and then you mix that with some archive and they've got this great 6-minute teaser they're sending around. And I'm like, this is awesome, And so that, especially with documentary, I think it's a little harder with narrative. Except that, make a short, like get in some festivals, show that you've got some legs.
I always call that the Wes Anderson model, like you did with Bottle Rocket, where he took like the scene of the robbery of the bookstore, which it isn't actually in the finished movie, but he made it as a standalone short, goes to Sundance, he gets a producer as a result.
And that's the thing, is like a great storyteller is going to reveal themselves
Be there from the beginning.
From the beginning, somebody who's a natural gift like that. And Linklater, announces himself. I know it's not his very first film, Slacker, but he announces himself, and he announces himself by saying, "Oh, the way you're used to seeing a movie, let me scramble that up. Let me break that into 35 different pieces."
Yeah.
And weirdly, we just talked about Merrily We Roll Along. The way that you're used to seeing a movie, let me scramble that. Let me break that up into 9 pieces over 30 years backwards. Who we are as storytellers, is who we are in a lot of ways. So that gets to my question for our lightning round is like, how can an emerging filmmaker, whether it's somebody who's fresh out of school or even on their way into school, or it's someone like you who had a full career and a lot of success doing something else and now wants to switch in to storytelling, how can they discover who they are? Like, did you discover who you were in the process as you became a producer and as you embraced storytelling from the film side?
Totally. I mean, I think that, it's all a learning process. I've always been a big documentary fan or whatever, but I didn't decide I wanted to go into film to make documentaries. It's just a different form of storytelling. As an aside, the greatest compliment you can get from someone who watches your documentary is to say, that didn't feel like a documentary, it felt like a movie.
Right.
And that means that it moved them, it had story, it sort of there's some structure to it or whatever. Even if you're messing with the structure, you have to understand how structure works in people's minds, like how stories work in people's minds. And so what was the question again?
Like discovering yourself. Like, was there a moment where you realized like, oh, this is who I am? And
like your storytelling voice.
Your storytelling voice. And I think like for a lot of us, you figure out who you are by first realizing who you're not. Right?
Yes.
And so I'm just curious, like your process, because you did, how old were you when you made the switch from political consulting?
I was in my 40s. Yeah. I decided to do that when I was 40.
Yeah.
And I started sort of working my way towards that. I started going to the Austin Film Festival, South by Southwest. I started reading books on screenwriting, started like educating myself. I started watching movies with a different eye that I really loved and taking notes. Like, when did certain things happen?
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, as much as people hate like to talk about the 3-act structure and stuff, that movies have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
They need to have a certain pace that makes sense in the mind. You can't slow down at the end. And so I guess I started to realize I was good at that. I don't know how to edit, but I know what works and what doesn't, so I'm good in an editing room. I'm good at a rough cut screening. You guys are great at rough cut screenings. I mean, that's one of the great things about Austin is you can show your films to people and get great feedback because you get so close to it that you can't see it. I just went to a rough cut screening last night. So I do think I started to realize that I had a personality for it too, that I could motivate people, that I could get along with people. A lot of filmmakers aren't good at getting along with people, and it really hurts you.
You have to motivate a group of people around a vision, right? Like in the way you said Rick wrote that email to everybody. Like, you have to have that ability as a leader and as kind of like somebody who can just be unflappable, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit like a
everybody can
coach.
do that. Like a
Like a coach a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving stuff. You have to deal with a whole lot of different people.
A lot of personality maybe.
Yeah. You got to deal with festivals. You got to deal with distributors. You got to deal with people who you want to give money to the project, to work on the project.
Right.
And what I really love is like, if someone's enthusiastic, they're going to get the job 9 times out of 10.
Enthusiasm always wins.
Yes. I mean, the person who really gets it, who really cares, who wants to work, is typically the person I'm going to pick.
That's awesome. Dream collaborator. If you could collaborate with anybody, one person, who would it be?
Gosh. Richard Linklater. No.
I mean, that's a great answer.
It's a good
and you're
one.
living the dream, Mike.
It's a good one.
Living the Dream with Mike Blizzard.
That's the title right there. We just found our episode title. Okay, last question. What is the thing you can't
Didn't
stop
get to have
thinking
the
about
last
right
question.
That's a really good one. Well, I'm buying a house right now. It's the first time in over 20 years.
Congrats.
I remember. Thank you.
That's huge.
And honestly, I keep thinking, is this a terrible mistake? Should I be moving to Ireland instead? Well, I'm kind of a stay and fight type of person, but the state of the world certainly wears on me. The state of the country wears on, I think, many of our minds all the time. It's hard to be productive. It's hard to collaborate and to be encouraging and whatever when you're worried about, where the world is moving and what sort of society we're becoming and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it does make everything, more difficult.
Totally.
How do you Ben said the last question, but I'm gonna ask one. How do you overcome? How do you withstand?
I think you have to just, I'm a big believer in continuing to put one foot in front of the other, and just things kind of naturally happen. And so if I'm stuck on one thing, I like to try to be juggling a lot of things. I can just move to that. Yeah. And I can think, you know what, rather than sitting here and worrying about what's going to happen with this, I'm going to go back to that idea. And you know what, someone was telling me recently they love that idea. Maybe I could make that curling movie I wanted to make, or whatever. And what's the status of that?
Please make the curling movie, Mike. I would love to see that.
You know what? We always say we're going to be less all over the place, but when you talk to somebody who has made, 10 films, and you talk to somebody who has interest all over the place, and we're interested in the things you're interested in, we're gonna go all over the place. Yeah. So if you guys are complaining about the fact that Mike is all over the place, you can blame Ben.
Mike, thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you. This was great, guys.
This is awesome.
Yes. Appreciate you.
Okay. All right, man. That was Mike Blizzard.
Living the dream, Mike Blizzard. I've known Mike Blizzard casually for many years, but I didn't know his whole story.
Same.
And now I feel like, but I still feel like there's plenty of pockets we couldn't get into. That's a guy you could talk to for hours.
And we forgot so many things, including probably the most relevant, which goes to show our podcasting hosting skills.
That's right. Our publicists do not love us, but the deep divers hopefully do. Mike Blizzard has news that we can share, breaking news.
Right, which we didn't ask him about, but his new movie that he produced for Richard Linklater is called Blue Moon.
Blue Moon.
And it opens here in Austin and worldwide.
Nationally and worldwide.
On the 24th
of
October.
That's right.
That's right.
So if you were catching this in 2040 because you just watched Merrily We Roll Along and you wanted to do the deep dive, Blue Moon is available via hologram on the inside of your eyeball. But if you were watching in 2025, it's October 24th.
24th.
Nationally.
I can't wait to see this movie.
It looks great.
This is one of the 3 that Mike is going to have in theaters this year. So please go support Richard Linklater, Mike Blizzard, the Austin filmmaking community. And thank you guys for listening to this episode.
Thank you. And when it comes time to talk about next time on Doc Walks, I want to reference probably the best moment of this podcast is when Mike said he saw the movie Tower 5 times and it was one of the best movies he ever saw. These are his words, not mine. But we are taking it to the streets with Tower producer Megan Gilbride walking in her hometown turf, her current hometown turf anyway, of Atwater Village in Los Angeles. So that's next time on Dog Walks. Ben, not there. He was invited.
Boo. That's right. But you walked without me.
I did.
I feel cheated on, but I'm so glad. I can't wait to see it. You and Megan are longtime collaborators and great friends, and I'm sure it's going to be a blast.
We know each other so well that we kind of dance all over a lot of different topics.
Oh.
So my guess is it won't be the only time we invite Megan onto the show.
Yep.
I hope not anyway. But I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you guys will tune in next time.
On Doc Walks.
Doc Walks is produced, directed, edited by me, Keith Maitland, and him,
Ben Steinbauer.
And we have a new member of the team, and he's been doing an incredible job.
Incredible job. We are so thankful to Dayton Thompson.
Happy to welcome co-producer Dayton Thompson.
That's right, to the pod. And he's bringing a whole level of sophistication that hopefully will come across in episodes in the future, and we're excited to have you. So welcome, Dayton.
Welcome, Dayton. We'll rope him into walking with us one of these days.
Hey, there you go.
Okay, we'll catch you on the trail
next time on Doc Walks.
One foot in front of the other.
Stop talking. Follow us at Doc Walks Pod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.